The film begins with a carnival in Kerala, a small village in India, with an elderly man smoking a cigarette. After smoking, he throws the cigarette on the ground and walks away to watch a theater show. The show's theme is based on a battle between outlaws and superheroes. A large crowd has gathered to watch the play. In the audience, there is a young boy whose father is acting as a hero in the play. While everyone is enjoying the play, a fire breaks out in a nearby cracker shop due to the cigarette discarded by the old man at the beginning of the film. Everyone rushes for their lives, leaving the boy alone to wait for his father. The fire gradually spreads, and the actors become trapped. But the play's hero displays heroism and manages to rescue the other actors as well as the villagers. In the meantime, another little explosion occurs, causing the boy to suffer serious injuries. Before fainting from injuries, the boy sees his father saving others, but before he can reach to help his son, he becomes entrapped in fire and dies. The scene then switches to many years later and opens with a television show titled Science This Week. According to the show's expert, today is the only day in 700 years when some planets will align and create a thunderstorm capable of causing substantial damage. The analysts advise everyone to stay at home and not leave unless absolutely necessary. Then we see Jason, our main character. Jason is a tailor by profession, but he is eager to relocate to America for a job. Jason has a crush on Binsi and wishes to marry her before leaving India. But Binsi's father, a police officer, dislikes Jason and intends to marry his daughter to a wealthy man. Jason used to go meet Binsi after her college, but today he is apprehended by Binsi's father, who lets him go after a final warning not to contact Binsi again. In another area of the village, we see Shibu, a middle-aged man who happens to be our villain. Shibu works at a tea shop and is not stable financially. His father works at home making crackers, and their combined earnings are insufficient to cover their needs. Shibu was in love with Usha from his teenage years on, but she married another man and left the village. Her husband died, and she returned to the village to live with her brother. Shibu is still unmarried and unable to forget Usha, and now fortune has provided him with an opportunity to marry her. As soon as Shibu hears of her arrival, he paddles a raft to her house. Meanwhile, Jason dons a Santa Claus suit and travels to Binsi's residence. While her father isn't home, he approaches her and offers to marry him, adding that he is moving to America and will have a nice job soon. Binsi responds that her father has now fixed her marriage with another man, and she is unable to intervene. While they are arguing, Binsi's father returns home, so she hides Jason under her bed. Binsi's father introduces her to a man he has chosen to marry her. Jason becomes furious when he sees another guy speaking to his crush and removes his mask to shout at him. As Santa removes his mask, Binsi's father recognizes that he is none other than Jason. Enraged, he pulls out his revolver and prepares to shoot Jason, but lightning strikes him first, causing him to drool immediately. In the meantime, another person is struck by lightning, and that person is none other than Shibu. Shibu also loses consciousness and swoons on his raft. Jason is taken to the hospital for medical treatment. The doctor starts looking at him right away but is shocked to see that he hasn't been physically hurt by the lightning. While Jason is receiving treatment at the hospital, Shibu regains consciousness on his own and returns home to rest after feeling sick. While he is sleeping, he begins to shiver, causing the entire house to shake. Shibu and his father mistake it for an earthquake and flee the house immediately. However, as they leave the house, the area stops shaking, indicating that Shibu possesses special abilities. He, too, begins to doubt that the house was shaking because of him. The scene then shifts to the hospital, where a doctor informs Jason's family that he is fine despite being struck by lightning. The family is relieved after hearing this, and the doctor discharges Jason, assuring him that he is alright. However, as he exits his stretcher, a dent appears on it, indicating that Jason, too, has got some superpowers. Jason's sister is helping him financially to apply for visas. She gives him her jewelry so he can sell it and make some cash to travel abroad. Jason then approaches Bruce Lee, his friend, and his nephew's karate instructor. Bruce Lee is assisting Jason in preparing his documents to travel to America. After having a discussion with her for a while, Jason leaves to use the restroom. He begins to cough violently, and a gray slime excretes from his body through his cough. He is perplexed as to what it is, but he decides to keep it hidden from everyone. However, things don't go well, and he starts to feel strange bodily sensations at night, waking him up to open the window for some fresh air. As soon as he pushes the window's door open, it breaks. He starts to think about what just happened. Jason's nephew, Joseman, is also perplexed as to how he just broke the window with a slight push. Their shock is increased when Jason begins to hear sounds that a normal human is unable to hear. He informs Joseman that a bathroom tap may be open. He goes to the toilet to close the tap, but he accidentally breaks both the tap and the door. Shibu is going through the same thing as Jason, and he's also throwing up that gray slime. The next morning, Jason's brother-in-law notices that his wife's jewelry is missing. He asks her where the jewelry is, but when he doesn't get a satisfactory response, he starts slapping her. When Jason notices this, he becomes enraged and smacks his brother-in-law into the well with a slight push. The entire family is now perplexed as to what is going on with Jason. Josemon informs Jason that he may have acquired superpowers in some way. Jason is unable to believe this, so Josemon informs him about different superheroes, their powers, and how they acquire them. Josemon advises him to examine himself to determine how many powers he possesses and how he can use them. In the meantime, Shibu, who is at home, eventually finds his superpower, which is to control things with his mind, or psychokinetic power. Shibu is confident that he can now easily marry Usha amidst every obstacle in his way, including her brother. Jason also gets to know about his powers, which include superfast instincts, a super hearing ability, combat abilities, and many more. However, unlike Shibu, he does not have psychokinetic power. He has a lot of fun with his powers, such as winning darts that he has never won before. Bruce Lee informs Jason that his visa application has been rejected due to a false claim by the police department. Jason realizes right away that Binsi's father has done it out of jealousy and decides to pay him a visit. Meanwhile, Usha arrives at Shibu's tea shop with her daughter. She orders food and sits down to eat with her daughter. Shibu ducks into a corner and starts to stalk his crush like he used to. Shibu's boss begins taunting Usha and says she should live with him in a live-in relationship. She does not respond and leaves after finishing her meal. Shibu, on the other hand, finds these words intolerable, so he confronts his boss and reveals his superpowers to him by lifting him in the air with a simple hand gesture. His boss is terrified and perplexed as to why Shibu is doing this. Shibu threatens him with death if he keeps talking to her in this way. The boss apologizes to him and asks him to let him go. Shibu lets him go after warning him not to reveal his abilities to anyone. Usha's brother, Dason, who works as a tailor at Jason's store, informs her that he has chosen someone to marry her. Usha tries to talk him out of getting remarried, but he refuses, saying he can't take the burden of her and her daughter. As soon as Dason departs for work, Shibu arrives outside of Usha's home and begins staring at her as he used to do in his teenage years. She immediately identifies him as Shibu, and they start a conversation. Meanwhile, Usha's daughter collapses to the ground and loses consciousness. They take her to the hospital, where doctors notify Usha that she immediately requires surgery, and they have to pay a hefty amount for it. Here, Jason arrives at the police station and argues with Binsi's father about why his police verification was cancelled. Binsi's father notifies him that his application got rejected due to a mismatch in his father's name on his birth and character certificates. Jason feels enraged, believing that Binsi's father set up this mistake to keep him from going abroad. Before he can get too far into his argument, his father discloses to him that he is his foster father. He adds that many years ago, several people died in a fire at a carnival, including Jason's father, but before dying, he implored him to care for his lone son. Jason's foster father adds that he concealed this information from him because he does not want to lose Jason as his son. Shibu decides to use his superpowers to help Usha with her daughter's treatment. He departs after promising Usha that he will return with funds. At home, Jason's father gives him a trunk from his late father and tells him that his father worked as a superhero in carnival shows but demonstrated his heroism in reality by saving many people and dying himself. The hero who saved people at the fun fair was discovered to be Jason's father, and the kid who drooled was Jason. Jason opens the trunk and discovers some of his father's stuff. He learns from them that his real name is Minnal Murali. Jason rushes to thank his stepfather for taking care of him as his own kid, but his father is wounded. After inquiring, Jason discovers that Binsi's father has punished him and has instructed him to keep Jason away from Binsi. He is enraged and decides to exact revenge on them. Josemon instructs him to disguise himself with a costume before using his powers in public. Jason reaches a carnival while dressed in a quite amusing outfit and begins beating up police officers. He departs after finishing thrashing them and writing his name, Minnal Murali, on the curtain. Elsewhere, Shibu, wearing a mask, robs a bank and rushes to the hospital, where he learns that Usha's brother has already paid the hospital expenses. Shibu walks back home without saying a word. As both the robber who held up the police and the bank robber were dressed in masks, the authorities believe that one man was responsible for both crimes. The next morning, the newspaper warns readers to be wary of a man in a mask named Minnal Murali. All of the villagers assumed it to be a single person, but Shibu and Jason now realize they aren't the lone entities of their kind. Later that day, when Jason goes to collect his cash from his shop, he discovers that the cash is missing. After asking around, he discovers that Dason stole the cash to pay for his niece's treatment. This is the money Jason received after selling his sister's jewelry. He loses his cool and criticizes Dason in front of the entire village, warning him to repay his money as quickly as possible. Shibu watched everything and approached Dason with money later in the evening. He offers him money in exchange for allowing him to marry Usha. Dason flatly refuses to take his money and abuses him. He orders him to leave and never thinks of Usha again. Shibu exits the shop but returns, this time revealing his abilities to Dason. He flies a scissor at him and tells him he can't marry Usha until he dies. After saying this, he criticizes him even more and exits the shop after setting fire to it with Dason inside. Jason's father advises him to apologize to Dason because he is their oldest employee. To comply with his father's advice, Jason goes to his shop and discovers that it is on fire. However, before he and the townspeople can put out the fire, Dason has passed away. The people hold him responsible for Dason's killing, claiming that he did it because Dason stole his cash. To prove that he is not responsible for it, Jason retrieves CCTV footage from his nearby shop and travels to the police station to check it. As they begin to play the footage, Shibu arrives wearing a mask and easily defeats the cops before fleeing with the footage. Jason, too, dons a disguise and pursues him. They both run at breakneck speed and catch a bus, where they begin a brief duel. But, the bus driver got hurt, and the bus became unstable. To regain control of the situation and keep the passengers safe, Jason stops fighting and manages to save all of the passengers as well as the bus before it falls off the side of the hill. Shibu rushes to the hospital to be treated for his injuries, where he learns that a few days ago, a man was struck by lightning but survived. He asks the receptionist for a patient's record and, after some digging, discovers that he is Jason. Jason also discovers that the person he was fighting with is Shibu. He learns this because, while fighting, he tears the collar of his opponent's shirt, which bears Jason's shop name, and after examining his shop records, he discovers that he is Shibu. However, the passengers learn through this fight that there are two Minnal Muralis, one who is trespassing and the other who is serving as a heroic figure. To apprehend Minnal Murali, the police place a large bell in the village's main bazaar and instruct residents to ring it whenever they spot Minnal Murali. The following day, Shibu murders the man who was set to wed Usha and writes real Minnal Murali on his vehicle. As Jason sees this, he feels awful because Shibu is demonizing his name. Later that day, they run into each other at the market and admit knowing about each other's powers. Shibu requests that Jason assist him in marrying Usha and promises to leave this town with her after their marriage. When they are conversing, the bell that was supposed to ring when the locals saw Minnal Murali starts to ring. They are both perplexed as to why the bell is ringing when they are here together. Suddenly, the two of them are surrounded by a large crowd and cops. Shibu notices his boss and realizes he has revealed his powers to the cops. He advises Jason to run because the cops are still unaware that he is Minnal Murali. As soon as Jason leaves, the locals begin hurling stones at Shibu, but he counteracts with his psychokinetic power and flees the scene. However, Jason gets caught by the police because his brother-in-law has found out that he was the one who attacked the police 2 days ago. Shibu rushes home and begins collecting his possessions to depart the village. But he finds Usha and her daughter inside his house. Seeing this, he becomes quite delighted and chooses to apologize to the villager and leave this village with Usha. While he is having a conversation with Usha, a group of people with flambeaux surrounds his home. Shibu exits the house to speak to the people, but they are unwilling to engage in conversation and hurl flambeaux at him. Shibu quickly dispatches all of the flamencos with his psychokinetic powers. Accidentally, one of them lands over his house. Before he could act to save Usha and her daughter, his father stored up fireworks caught fire, and the house blew up in a matter of seconds. The very next morning, Shibu wakes up in his destroyed home to discover that his love has passed away. Very distraught, he vows to exact revenge on the villagers. In the evening, he dresses as a scarecrow and goes to a fun fair, where he triggers explosions thanks to his powers. He causes harm to numerous locals as well as the police, and he continues to wreak mayhem. Just in time, Vincey's father requests that Jason show off his superpowers and stop Shibu before he wipes out the entire village. When he is about to unlock the door to his cell, he discovers that the keys are lost. Then Jason reveals his superpowers and breaks the door with a gentle push. He puts on his freshly made costume and heads to the carnival to face Shibu. The two superhumans face each other and commence their heated duel after exchanging some words. Despite having better instincts and being stronger than Shibu, Jason is still unable to defeat him due to Shibu's psychokinetic power. Shibu overpowers him and begins bashing his face with iron bars while blaming the villagers for the ruckus. Jason loses his powers and falls to the ground. As soon as he collapses to the ground, he has flashbacks to when he was little and drooled while his father died saving the villagers. He now has complete remembrance of his past, and as a result, he obtains psychokinetic power, which is greater than Shibu's. He confronts Shibu once more and uses a large spear to stab him in the abdomen, killing him instantly and saving the whole village. Jason abandons his desire to fly to America for employment and instead decides to stay in the village and guard it against all dangers, and this is where the film ends.
I hope you enjoyed the recap. If so, then give this video a thumbs up. And yes, if you want to be the first to know about my new videos, hit the subscribe button right now. It may seem worthless to you, but it is a huge motivator for me to keep going. I'll see you in my next video. Have fun and keep watching the Movie Explainer.